Hello and welcome to another episode. Welcome to Values and Vibes. Today we're going to talk about another value. It's humor. And we can start about that. Louisa, do you want to explain?
I give up. I'm gone. I'm like, no, I can't give you my energy because where do we go from here?
Yeah. None of my jokes land. Like my jokes always land. People always think I'm funny because it's always nice to have Bob in the office who makes everyone laugh.
But when I go to the US, people think I am hilarious. Like,
stay with us for the next value. Bye, Tia. Hello and welcome to another episode. Welcome to Values and Vibes. Today we're going to talk about another value. It's humor. So Lisa, can you explain what is humor as a value?
So our definition of humor in our model is to see, enjoy, or create comical situations in everyday life.
I feel like that is my life. So, I mean, based on in my tiny little home right now in London, central London, to have 1,500 square feet of us, to have Sophia and Gab, Maria and her new boyfriend, who's being, you know, everyone's saying, is he gonna last? Not gonna last. Very nice guy. Colin and me, my father-in-law and sister-in-law in the hotel around the corner. I guess, and the King of Jordan's been in all week across the street. So about 75 police vehicles and machine guns. My life is one large bit of humor lately. But if you can't see like humor in everyday life, then, and humor sits in openness.
Yeah.
So people, I think, who allow themselves to be open to turning situations into, you know, some kind of comedy, I think probably live with a little more peace in a sense, because if you walk around taking everything so seriously, I mean, there are things that need to be serious, but most things should be able to be kind of almost laughed at. I mean, a diagnosis of a sickness or something like that, of course not, but most situations are humorous if you turn them kind of inside out.
Yeah, I think as well. It's interesting with the model. For me, I don't think I knew how important humor was in my life. But when I asked people to describe me, ever since I remember at school, you had to write the person next to you. It was always like funny or something like that. And I think it's always something I've taken for granted. When I'm in a situation where it's in conflict, if I am sat at a wedding or a dinner table next to someone who, in my opinion, has no sense of humor, I just think, oh, I don't know what to say. How do I communicate with this person? So I think it's such an important value for me.
I agree. That's such a good point. So remember when Maria first went to the startup, the skincare line in LA, and it wasn't, she learned a ton, but I think in other ways it wasn't, her favorite place to be. But when she called me one time and she said, none of my jokes land. Like my jokes always land. People always think I'm funny. And she's like, I just don't know if like I'm like an alien in LA or what it is. But yeah, I think that's an interesting, that's a great point, because I think it's difficult. I mean, sometimes you work harder to make those people laugh, but I think sometimes that can get awkward as well. I don't know.
I give up. I'm gone. I'm like, no, I can't give you my energy because where do we go from here?
Yeah, if you're not getting anything back. True.
Exactly.
I can feel Maria, because when I moved to the United States from Serbia, and I was thinking that I'm really funny person from here, but my jokes were there not accepted, especially in California.
Except for me, I laughed a lot with all your jokes.
Yeah, but it is Coast. When you're a West Coast, it's really hard to make people laugh.
Oh, same thing. Yeah, you moved in the West Coast, same thing.
Yeah,
I had the same thing happen.
People are so sensitive, and everybody's like, oh, that's not cool to say or whatever. I was like, it's a joke.
The East Coast are more like the British. It's a bit more tough humor, and I mean, for me, the biggest pride I have is of being British is the sense of humor that British people have. No one can take the piss out of themselves better than the British can.
I totally agree. I mean, I love that about them. I always say they're the nicest grumps or the funniest grumps you'll ever meet, because they're always kind of a little, and same with New Yorkers, but they're funny, and they're also self-deprecating. And I think that that part of humor when it comes to our model is the most important part, because as you know, if you overuse anything, you know, to its extreme, it becomes negative, and people who in openness who overuse those values can appear as if like their beliefs or their wants and needs come at the expense of other people, often hurting them. And I think that if you could use humor can be used negatively if you're making fun of someone else or making them the butt of your jokes, and that's where it could fall into something that's, you know, negative. But if you find that nice balance, I think it's just, I don't know, it just changes the.
I think as well, because we've just had the Euros, we've just had the football, and England just always disappoint us. But the first people posting online and taking the piss out of our team, our country, and whoever we've played with are the British, because they can find a joke and everything. Even when we lost to Spain, people were writing very funny things on social media or whatever. And when it was going to be the final, it was, okay, Spain, if we beat you, we get to keep Benidorm, which is like the typical Brits abroad destination and things like that. So there was just so many things that were coming out that are very funny. And I just think it's, in order to get over things, as someone who's British, I think we use humor a lot here, and culturally humor is very different. If I go to Sweden, so my dad is Swedish, and he's the least Swedish Swede you've ever met, really. He actually went to high school in California and lived, then went to Florida and all that. So he's very kind of the world. But
Transatlantic.
yeah, the Swedish people, they have a very different sense of humor. You don't take the piss out of them. They don't understand it as well. Like they have a funny sense of humor, which is different. It's more sarcastic, which they'll use in their comedy programs, which is funny. But when you first met someone, you have to really judge the situation.
Yeah, what's going to land and what's not going to land.
Yeah, and it is different. Like you're saying, just from East Coast to West Coast is different.
Oh my God,
yeah,
it was so different. You know, when we moved to Miami and I would just be myself, like maybe more politically correct because I spent like 3 years in California. But when I see that jokes are landing, I was like, oh my God, we need to go here. We need to live here. We need to move here.
yeah, exactly. Because I mean, I think it's a matter of just people like not taking every situation in life so seriously. The interesting thing, a really interesting point from our model, because what we've really become in a lot of ways is almost like a data analysis firm, because we can just obtain so much information for an organization based upon the activities that we do, right? So if we're going to talk about anonymously a client that we worked with, it was crazy, like cross-culturally, we found that we were comparing a London office versus a European London office versus a Midwestern office in the United States. And the number one value in this workplace for this for the London European base was challenge and prosperity, which you know, and it's more in the finance sector. Made sense with the finance individuals I've studied in the past and whatnot. However, in the Midwest part of the United States, it was humor.
Oh my God.
That was their number one value. So my question is the Midwesterners in the United States are really known as nice people, people.
Yeah.
They just are, you know what I mean? And they also chose like our blocker, which is called the lens blocker, which, you know, Louisa and I always talk about blockers, how these value blockers, when honed, can be beneficial to your existence. So obviously they see humor. So it must be keeping like the office setting light, you know, being able to be self-deprecating, but also to have this lens blocker. Maybe they can somehow paint a picture even when things go wrong. I don't really know, because I haven't fully studied those analytics and gone deeper with that. But I found that unbelievable and so almost charming that humor was their number one value across the people in their finance office. Crazy, right?
Yeah, and the way it sits in openness, it is about pick yourself up and push on. And the amount of friends I've had who we literally they can be crying about something and then they'll say a joke about themselves and it's funny again, and that's their way of getting into the next situation. I think when I go to funerals, there's more jokes there than when I go anywhere else, because it's all about the good memories and the good time when they did this, when that went wrong, and it's a coping mechanism to say, okay, we can push through. And openness people who have heaviest zone of openness are very good at that. That's their natural skill. They're on to something else because it's interesting and it's exciting and it's new and it's funny.
Yeah. And it fills up those needs that they might, you know, they need to go on, in a sense. It gives them food, energy for living. So yeah, it's a fun value to talk about.
Yeah, humor is in my final 8, just to know.
Oh,
I was speaking with some guy. He have a really huge company here, and he's like in Eastern Europe. And I asked him like, oh, you know, like, what do you think it's like main thing for your employees and your closest people, like closest to CEO, you know? And he's telling me, do you know that I have a guy who is only funny? He doesn't do nothing, you know? But he's so funny, and he has same salary like everybody else. But you know, like when he comes to meeting, when he is like, when we have like bad day, whatever, when he comes, like everybody's laughing and he's making our day, and you know, like, and he's like, I'm just keeping him only because he's fun. That's well, a skill, you know, like.
That's such an interesting, a great thing to bring up, because we were just talking about honing those negative, sometimes what can be not negative, but derailers, as Louisa would say, to an individual's day is that the halo blocker, right? Is like,
and can I just add to you while you carry on, Halo supports humor. So that's a fantastic story. So carry on.
Exactly. That is so great, because Halo supports humor in that zone. And that's, you know, at some point you probably will want to move that person into a role in which they can actually thrive kind of in the workplace as well. So maybe they're not looked upon by others in a jealousy, or feel as if there's favoritism. But that's just such a great example, because it's always nice to have Bob in the office who makes everyone laugh. So Bob in the office, maybe
he's a doctor, like,
yeah, but maybe we should put Bob in sales, or maybe Bob should be customer service. Who knows? When we can pay Bob whatever we want to pay Bob, but he adds a lot of value. But I think that when it would come to like value-driven workplaces, I would probably advise the employer, okay, that's great. You have this blocker, you have these few people. I don't think it's a matter of not keeping them on your teams. I think it's a matter of positioning them in places where people don't feel resentment. You know what I mean? That they don't feel like he just gets the job because he or she just has a job because they make people happy and bring donuts to the office, you know? I don't know. But that's interesting. It's crazy you brought that up.
Yeah. I just thought, as she was saying it, I was like, wow, Milena, it's exactly what the model says, which is crazy. It works, hey.
Well, like a couple of examples, like where they're losing money, when they're losing clients, and they have like a circular email, you know, like, oh, sorry to say, but you know, that client, we are losing them, they find another competition, whatever. And he would say send sentence like, oh, thank God that we know that he's alive, we're gonna find a new one, or something so stupid, you know, and everybody's like laughing, and everybody's like, don't worry, we're gonna find another one, you know, like, so everybody loves him, nobody's jealous about him, nobody have a problem with him. They love him so much. And I said, how did you find this guy? And he was like, I met him in like, you know, like
in a bar.
He was probably he was selling some fruits, and he was going daily to buy some shitty fruit that he was selling, because only he was funny, you know, like, and he was like, do you have a job?
I mean, the thing about it though, the thing is about a guy like that too. I mean, there's like the world of work has evolved and changed so much that there's a big role, like people, like culture chief. That's a thing now. So I think it's like, if that's someone's really greatest skill, is to make others feel welcome and happy, and it to be an enjoyable place. There's like, seriously, there's a chief of culture. There's onboarders who kind of bring the new people on board to their new job and kind of go with them those first week or so of work. So I think there's a lot of use for somebody whose primary value, or at least one of their maybe couple, 2 or 3 that they're really using all the time. It's a great skill for a workplace, you know? I
think, and he can throw us a couple of jokes.
Right, so there's his use. That's his use, like, exactly. That's
fine, because they love him. They love him, and they know the company where he's coming from, and of course they're gonna give him business because they want to see him again.
I even think about like my middle daughter, Sophia, who works on a trading floor, and, you know, she still hates me because I didn't bring her to LA to be an actress. Okay, she is in a theater, because it's mostly men still on trading floors, and she's funny. She can speak multiple languages. She can do accents. So she's like in the theater every single day. And I told her that, you know, it's like, I mean, you said you wanted to be Hannah Montana, but instead you're Sophie, the bond trader, and you're making people laugh. Or the interest rates trader.
Yeah.
So,
I was just thinking though, the humor note, to see, enjoy, create. There's so many ways to have humor in your life, when you have this value, right? You see it, you can enjoy it, but then to be able to be a part of it. And I think, honestly, I talked about funerals in tough times. That's when, for me, it's something that's really shone through. Like when I had a family member who went to rehab, they tell a very funny story that there's a load of alcoholics, ex-drug addicts in there, all in this rehab. And then what do the rehab do? They have an ice cream van that comes every other day because it's sunny, and 30 ex-alcoholics and ex-drug addicts all running to the ice cream van to queue for a Mr. Whippy. And they tell this story, and it was just like, and I was one of them. It's like, wow, the best thing of the day. And
For
just
sure.
in a really serious situation where people are changing their lives around, that was something that for them just made it hilarious every day.
Right. To see humor into like all of this like kind of seriousness and, you know, even grief. Exactly. I mean, I guess that's why humor exists.
Yeah,
know?
but there's that quote, a day without laughter is a day wasted. And I love that because it for me is so true.
I completely agree. I can see now when I'm in Belgrade because it's easier for me to make jokes because it's in my language. But if I don't spend time with people that I'm gonna laugh, it's like why I'm here, you know, like
Yeah.
it's wasting my time, you know, yeah, I could work or whatever. So now, even before I was choosing people who are fun instead of they're good or bad. I'm like, you're boring or you're funny. So
Yeah. I mean, and people who aren't necessarily funny themselves can be good audiences and good, like, kind of part of the fun still, you know what I mean? So I think that's the greatest thing. I think that you can be someone who can give humor, but I think it's being able to accept humor as well.
Of
You
course.
know?
I have a friend who is like that, and I would say she's the thickest skinned in the friendship group because she will just take joke after joke after joke, and it's fantastic. And I compliment her on it all the time because it doesn't matter what you say. And it's very British. It's all, we all do it to each other, but she will take it. And she doesn't come up with the jokes as much as other people, but she'll sit there and go, yeah, but yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think also you need to be intelligent, you know, like to make jokes, you need
Yeah,
to
I agree. Because it's fast.
Yeah, I think it's a really good value, you know, even if you find somebody that is like a forgotten value, you know, like, so if somebody have that like a forgotten value, how he can, implement that in your life, like how can you bring that in life, like in company, how can you show that he's funny?
I mean, I think you surround yourself with people who laugh a lot. I think that if you're a person that's a lost, forgotten value for you, and you remember spending a lot of time laughing and joking with friends, and you maybe were a practical joker kind of guy at school, or got in trouble for being like the class clown, as we call it in the US. I think that you have to seek out maybe friendships or situations. I mean, I guess you could say go to comedy clubs and watch funny movies, but truly that's whatever brings laughter back into your life. But I think it's likely around, maybe you've lost some of those associations, some of those friendships. It probably goes much deeper than just the value itself, if that makes sense. That if it is a lost or forgotten value, then there's probably a lot underneath and a lot of catalysts for change that you can work with the model in order to bring that back. But I think it's probably in most of, and frankly, maybe it even comes down to your job. Maybe if you're going to work and everybody is so serious there all day but you still enjoy your work, then maybe it's time to take that work into an environment where maybe the product they're creating creates more elements for laughter or what have you. I think there's many ways that you could bring that back into your life.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to, I mean, if you're an air traffic controller, you're not going to be laughing, oh, let's land this plane in the wrong place or something like that. When you're in your role, or you're a lawyer and you're in the courtroom, you're not then just going to make a silly joke. When you're in that role, you're in that role. But when you come out of it and you break out with your team, I think the beauty of humor is I don't have roles that serious, but when I've been training people, you have a one-on-one debrief with someone in psychology. It's very serious. You don't make joke. You listen to someone, you talk. But afterwards, do I go and sit with my team and we're talking about something we did on the weekend and laugh? Absolutely. So it's finding
you
the
might even have
pockets
something funny
yeah.
about this, but you might even find something in a debrief to laugh about.
But for me, I could. But I mean, like if we're doing air traffic controllers and things, they'll probably just wait and then
right. But if you're doing a debrief with someone, I imagine there is some moments of levity because people often will be like, especially with blockers. Oh yeah, well maybe I do that. I mean, I remember writing some reports for some trader types, and that's when it was just heavily on the qualitative side where I do these interviews. And I would find from the interview that they didn't choose blockers, but they were saying certain ones right to me. I mean, they might have been using different words, and I would use them and actually in the reports and say, you have this blocker. And they were like, and then by the end of it, they were laughing. They're like, how did you know that? You're right. And I was like, well, you told me. I mean, I'd read back exactly the words that they said. So I think that you find humor even in like you said, funerals and in serious conversation, you know. But you're right. You're not going to go make a joke with the judge when you're in the middle of your opening statement or land the plane in another state. So yeah.
That would be funny though.
Yes, that would be.
So much fun. It would be so much fun. But
I
then,
am.
okay, sorry, Louisa, continue.
No, you go, Milena.
No, for example, if I have a company and I realize that main value for them, if I got report from Rivali 180, and if I see that main value is humor, how I can make, you know, how I can bring that to company, how do they use, you know, like somebody would suggest, like, let's go to team building or something. How can I daily implement value of humor if
you know, it's fun. That's also a great question. Just asking so many like on point questions today, our podcast host, Milena. But the thing is that's really funny about that is when we worked with this client, and Louise will remember, right after our presentation, they had internal awards. And the people that presented the awards, I happen to know one of them from living in the Midwest. And he's a very comical, funny, fun-loving guy. And I think a company that prides itself in being serious and doing serious work, but also having a light atmosphere will do things like that. They'll have like award ceremonies every couple months, and they're almost there. I mean, I just think it even comes down to like planning monthly events, one monthly event. Maybe they do go to a comedy club. Maybe whatever it might be, it's activities that are social and where they can interact and spend time like laughing and joking and being humorous. Right?
Yeah, and that's where you have to. Yeah, that's where you have to remember where it doesn't mean that absolutely everything is then a joke. It's about having the value come in and be relevant when it's there and part of the culture. And then when we're doing something, dog, we're doing something serious.
I thought that was like a plastic bag there.
Hello, dog. When you're doing something serious, then it is serious. It's like if you have a value in the company of order, it doesn't mean that absolutely everything someone does has to be structured and ordered. There will be flexibility within it, but it's a big part of the culture of how things come out. So yeah, I would agree with Tia. It's finding those moments to let it shine.
I think that's a really good point as well. Like I'm thinking about some companies that I know that are very stuck to using MBTI. There's big companies out there that we all know that they still use those, and it puts these people in these classifications. And guess what? Because of their classifications, these ones that contain the introvert part of that's their personality aren't expected to attend certain social things, which I don't necessarily think is great. I think then that is doing exactly what our value-based model doesn't do. We don't categorize people. We don't put them in in specific groups. I mean, we find commonalities among groups of shared values, but the whole idea is we shouldn't be put into situations with only like-minded people, because how do we experience and learn from those around us and grow as individuals? So I think that's another great thing, because if you're building teams and humor is overall important to an organization, then I think it's important when you're looking at their team profiles that maybe at least one member of each team that shines through. Humor is a top 8 value. It just makes you happy.
But honestly, Louisa, if you have some funny guy or funny girl, of course you're gonna go towards their, you know, like of course you're gonna speak with her daily. Of course you're gonna spend time. Even she doesn't do nothing, she's funny and you love her energy and she's bringing you joy or whatever, you know, like I totally understand that guy, that he's paying so much, the guy who is bringing like a really, really good jokes.
Exactly. But he found something he was good at. He speaks 10 languages. So he's smart enough leader that he's like, okay, this guy's funny, but I can use him because he can be an interpreter for all these meetings. So people know that he has value add, as they say.
But the caveat,
so
the caveat with that, Milena, isn't so much their relationship one-on-one, it's the impact that has on everybody else. So reputationally, what does that individual, the manager who's hired that person who is funny just for that, how does that make the rest of the team feel? Because at the end of the day, they're hitting KPIs and they're doing this and that, and they know they have different skills to offer. So it's not just about that one-on-one, it's your reputational cost to the rest of the team.
Well, and really, if we're really going to take this one step further, what this guy is doing, or this gal, or whoever it may be, is that whole idea of that. I think it's called Pygmalion. It's the Pygmalion effect. Happiness is contagious. So if someone's creating humor and and it creates a happy organization, it's contagious, as is anxiety and depression or like kind of low well-being. It's also a contagion. So I think it's very important for a CEO to have something, you know, to keep that levity, to keep that humor in an office place somehow, because that goes directly to our well-being. Because even if you hate your day-to-day job, if you love the people you work with because they make you laugh and they fill you up, then great, then you're still happy to go into work. You know, maybe it's just you don't have another skill, so you've got to keep, you know, making these widgets. But it's okay because the guy who makes widgets next to you is hysterical, so you laugh all day. I mean, that's great for
exactly. You know? He told me that people love to go to that work. You know, like they love to be there, and they love whenever it's a serious meeting or it's like something like they're just celebrating. They know that he's gonna come and do something. You know, like during the summer he would come like a Santa. You know, like, and he's idiot. You know, like, making fun and joke and everything, and he's giving them presents like from $1 store. You know, like he's funny, and that's his job, and he's doing amazing job. Also, he's closing clients because clients, they love him. So, you know, I think that would be a necessity for every company to have at least one guy or girl.
I agree. I think it's a necessary ingredient. I mean, I guess it in some essence it goes to the core of the model, because in its truest sense, it was the happiness and productivity model for the workplace. We've obviously built it out to be a data solutions, to hire with it, to maximize talent, to do all these things with it. But in its purest essence, it's a model of happiness. Obviously, we know that happiness is living with meaning and purpose, but humor is a really important aspect of living with meaning and purpose, because if you're smiling a lot and while you're doing what you're doing, it adds meaning to your day, because it's creating that positive energy, those those endorphins. So,
and can you tell me that, you know, now Maria, that she didn't have like successfully to be, she wasn't successfully funny on West Coast. What would you suggest for me, for example, if I'm going to a company where nobody thinks that I'm funny? What should I do with my boring colleagues?
I think maybe hopefully you get a little bit of a vibe before you accept the job offer. I mean, you can continue to, I mean, I think if it's a job you have to have and you have no choice and your colleagues are really boring, and it doesn't matter if you like spit nickels and stand on your head, they're not going to laugh. I think you're going to have to spend a lot of time a lot of time outside work doing things that fulfill that value, you know, like doing, you know, spending time with the friends that make you laugh, you know, obviously, hopefully the partner you choose, if you have a partner, makes you laugh. I mean, watching funny shows, like children's shows, are always funny. Just kind of keeping that childlike side to you in other parts of your day, because at least you come into work, you might be completely burned by the end of the day because everybody is so dry and not laughing. But if you fill up your tank enough, I mean, we studied in our master's, Louise and I, this kind of the burnout cycle, and it's all about having enough reserves in your tank. So I think that if you're someone that's really important to you, it's how you're going to build up those reserves so you're not going to be depleted. You know,
and you probably want it more, you know, when you get home or even on your lunch break, give someone a call, talk it through.
Yeah, exactly.
I being very optimistic, I do think everyone has a sense of humor. I think it can vary drastically depending on that person. So I would say if there's a way and someone felt they have enough social skill to do it, find out what that was for that person. I remember my last job, there was one of the coders who had a completely different sense of humor to a lot of the psychologists, and he was an older male and we were younger females, whatever. And I can manage to get in with his sense of humor. He did a lot of these Dungeons and Dragons games and things like that, and like these epic fantasy. And I know that world because Rich loves that world too. So I could get in, talk, we could make these jokes that finally then I could bond with him over a humor that no one else understood. So I do think people might have a different way of seeing the funny side of life. And if you don't understand it, then probably Tia's route is the right way. Wait till you find you get
Well,
home.
no, and I do think you're right, because the whole point of like finding congruent values amidst an organization is if you do some value assessments across an organization, you are going to find some people, if people are willing to share their information, who have similar values, and even if they don't necessarily all share humor, if they have other values amid the team that they share and you have commonality, you will find humor eventually. It might not be something that they
I'm just laughing at you. You're disappearing because you're moving the camera off your
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
as you were speaking, you were just slowly.
Oops, sorry. Let me put my camera on.
Tell me. Tell me.
I think it's because I'm moving
You're
my
like,
computer. Oh, shit, that's not good. We're gonna have to. Oops. I'm obviously feeling a little hyper this morning, guys. Sorry. I have like a steroid pack for my condition. It makes me a little jittery.
But this is the thing, Melia, we're laughing so much. I think it's like it's just coming around. I'm laughing for no reason.
Well, I mean, you are laughing because I'm making myself bigger and smaller.
I think you're doing that on purpose.
Maybe I'm just trying to give you some optical illusions over there.
But my last question. My last question is like, okay, if humor is something that is familiar with you and something that you recognize, that you already been to that situation, and you're like, oh my God, this is funny because yeah, that's my truth and it happened to me also, so I understand. You know, like, so if you share same cultural thing, for example, what happened in Serbia, you know, of course, every Serbian guy or lady, she's gonna find that funny. Same with you, Louisa or Tia, you know, like you're gonna find something common. And then, but if you go to another culture, you know, and then you want to be funny, I think you just need to find now new truth that you can share and that's going to be common for you guys. And that's going to be funny. What do you think?
I think so. I mean, I guess what I find most interesting, and that's why I'm so amazed by someone like you or Esther, who helps me like in my place in Miami, or just any person that comes to a culture where that's not their primary language. I think the language barrier is the hardest thing. And I think that once you can really understand their language, then I think a lot of things are more cross-cultural than we think. Yes, the things that they're joking about, we might not understand because we're not part of we don't really understand so much their nuances of their language. So I think as for you probably, and I don't know this, but you could only answer this, as you became more and more comfortable with English, it became easier for you to make other people laugh because
but I think
you understood their language. I think it did because I mean, we're all speaking English to you and you make us laugh all the time. But I do think
I'm not sure. Welcome to Quick Market.
Yeah. I mean,
you have to just listen for a while, right? And kind of understand. And what I hear mostly, because I have a very European family, I have a Swedish dad, a Spanish sister, Italian brother-in-law. We have like everything going on in different languages. And often what you find, you talk and you make a joke and people around the table are laughing. And the person who it's not their first language will say, well, we say this. So it's the same joke, but we say it in this way. And that's such a beautiful thing because it's like, I understand exactly the point you're hitting, but these would be the exact use. I
mean, that's even like with English, American English and British English. That's even like similar to that because I mean, I find myself saying to Louisa a lot, well, we say it this way, but you guys might say it this way. And I think that there's humor in just seeing the differences. So
yeah, I think with the US as well, the humor can be very different, I find, because whenever I go to the US, and I don't think I'm a comical genius, but when I go to the US, people think I am hilarious. Like all my jokes, because it's quite witty, because that's how I grew up with British humor, and it's very dry, and it's so I have people laughing laughing with me, I should say, the entire time, and I don't think some of the jokes are that funny, but some of them just don't translate as well. That we wouldn't say that here, as you're saying, Tia.
Yeah.
You have a very British humor for an American, Tia, because you've lived for so long and stuff. But there is a big difference, I think. Like, for example, and I'll get criticized, because I don't find Friends funny at all, because I think it's.
You know what's funny is I don't either.
I just think it's not clever. It's not clever humor, and they have this bullhorn of laughter. Yeah, I don't get it. I prefer like some of the older British comedies where it's very clever and it's intricate and it's weaved in. Like Larry David, who does
Oh my
Curb Your
God.
Enthusiasm.
Yeah.
He is hilarious because it's clever humor.
I
And
agree, I agree.
then Gervaisi is just hilarious because he's clever as well, you
I need
know?
to mention only
Yeah.
sources from BBC. And we're going to finish this episode. Thank you so much for watching us. Stay with us for the next value. Bye, Tia.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.